Hello, welcome. In this video, we are going to learn how we can create Oracle integration to create purchase requisition with the help of REST API. So we will create integration in such a way that whenever that integration will be triggered, in request payload, we will pass value. We will pass the data for which we have to create the purchase requisition. And in the response of that integration, we will return back the requisition number. And if we are not able to successfully create the requisition, we will throw an error. So all the details we are going to learn. So before going to continue, let's discuss about the test cases. So here we have simple use cases from suppose in organization they implemented VVCS page and user have entered the requisition details from VVCS page and they want to submit. So requirement is whenever the user will submit, click on the submit button on the VVCS page, the requisition data will be passed to that Oracle integration and then that Oracle integration will create the purchase requisition in Oracle Fusion and it will return back the requisition ID or requisition number 2 as a response. So how we can implement that one? We are going to learn in this video only. And yes, there are some requirement like we all required data to create purchase requisition. We are not getting from the request payload. Some data we will get from OIC lookup also, so that we can get the exposure of lookup also, like how we can use lookup in integration and all. So now here you can see once integration will be completed, even user will get an email notification. All the details we are going to implement here. So what step we have to follow and what will be the details of integration, all this we will discuss here. So here the integration patterns or type will be app driven so that we can configure request and response payload, and the integration type will be synchronous and inbound. Synchronous because we are going to get data and returning back some data, and inbound it means that we are going to get data inside OIC. That's why we are inbound, and data request will be data source will be request payload and some data we will get from OIC lookups, and the integration response we will return back a status as success or error, and if it's success we will return back the purchase requisition number. And yes, once completed the integration we will notify user with the help of email notification. So all these things we are going to implement here. Before going to continue, I request you to, if you have not subscribed this channel yet, please subscribe this channel and don't forget to like this video. Let's begin. So here you can see I have already created videos where I show you that how you can create purchase requisition from front end. You can create purchase requisition from REST API, all this thing using Postman. I have already created videos. Now this time we will create integration. With the help of integration only we will create the purchase requisition. So here when we try with the REST API, we get to know about that what are the request payload we require to create purchase requisition. So this is the request payload to create purchase requisition, right? So all this value we need to pass to call the REST API from integration to create the requisition. So this is first point. Another point is that we know that we are getting this data. We will get this data from request payload of that integration only, so that whenever the VVCS page or any third party system will call the integration, it will pass all this data. But yes, there we have to implement the lookup concept also. So let me make some values as hard coded coming from the lookup only. So what we can choose? We can choose that the requisition BU we will get from the lookup, preparer ID we will get from the lookup, and here everything is fine. Line types suppose we will get from the lookup, and the destination code we will get from the lookup. So we want to create integration in such a way that these four details we will get from lookup and the rest of the details we will get as a request payload. So let me first create the request payload for integration. So let me copy this one and I will give the name as integration request payload. And in integration request payload, here we will get all the values and expect that except these four values. I will delete these four from here, and all these four value we are going to add in the lookup. So let me create one lookup here. So let me give the name suppose lookup, and what all columns we want to provide in the lookup. So we want to provide the column in the lookup is requisition BU, and then the preparer ID, and we have line type code, and the last we have the destination type code. So we will create a lookup and we will add these four columns in the lookup only, right? So now here if you will see, when we are going to create lookup, we are in integration, we are sending email, right? So the email part also we can add in the lookup only. So in lookup we will add one extra column like from email, from email to email, right? These two we will add in the lookup only. So now here let me first create the lookup, then we will create the connection to invoke the REST API. To invoke this REST API, here this is the request payload for invoke Fusion REST API. Right, this is the request payload for invoking the Fusion REST API. As I copy the same request payload from the Postman. So let me again copy this one here. Let me delete this request payload. Right. So this I will configure here in the REST response, REST request payload while invoking the REST API. And this will be our integration request payload and integration response. What we want to return? Integration response. In integration response, I want to return as first column as a status, and the status will be that success or error, right? Based on the logic. And now second column we want to return as requisition number. Requisition number, right? So these two value we want to return. And even it will send an email also, right? So let me create the lookup first. So move integration, and for creating the lookup, we need to move to integration, and here we have lookup. So let me create one new lookup. So we'll give the name access. So let me give the name as access SCM LKP lookup, supply chain lookup. Click on create. And now here we have to provide the columns and the details. So here let me first change the column. So here you can see there can be requirement, right? The same lookup we can use for different integration. So we have to identify first for which integration we are going to get this value. So here first column we will add as int code as integration code, right? So here we will give the first column as integration code. And in integration code, we will use as PR for purchase requisition. Suppose we are going to create a lookup for that will be used for purchase order. So we will add one more column, and that column value will be PO for purchase order. Based on your requirement, you can add anything, right? So the first column we added integration code, and now requisition BU. So right now we have hard coded requisition BU as we know that for each and every integration for each and every requisition we have the same requisition BU. So I will copy this requisition BU and I will paste here. Now the next column we will have the preparer ID. So I will add one more column and I will give preparer ID. And what will be the preparer ID value? So preparer ID value we already got from the request payload. So I will pass here. Now after that we have the line. Let me add one more column, line type code. And what will be value will be for line type code? The value will be for goods. That can be changed based on the requirement, but as for testing purpose or learning purpose, we are using the same value, right? After that, we have destination type code. So destination type code here we will use. Now destination type code, what we have destination card type code as expense. So that at runtime, whenever we will change, integration will use that runtime value. After that, here you can see we have from email and to email. So from email will be same, but to email we will have the success and error case, right? So there can be some times, right? We have to send email, different email for success, different email for error. So we'll use that one, right? To email underscore error. So these two column we will add. So let me add first from column. And from email, we will want to give that no reply at oracle.com. And now to email success, right? So in to email success, let me add my email only, at gmail.com. And now we have the last is to email error. So here again to email error also I am going to give my email only. But yes, you can add on different emails. So suppose in to email I want to give another email that foxtech@gmail.com. Now done. We are done with the lookup. So let me save. So this will be 100%, and then once we save, it will be configured. So once it's configured, we will be able to use this in our integration. So let me add another instance. I don't want to change here. So now here it's time to create the element of the integration. That can be the first element will be the connection. So here I am going to create connection. So I will create REST connection. I will create a REST connection to expose to invoke the REST API. To invoke, this is the REST API for creating the requisition. Same we have used here, right? So to invoke this REST API, we have to create a REST connection. So I will create one connection that can be used by useful while triggering the integration and invoking the REST endpoint. So I will create here. I will select the REST and here select, and here we have to give the name. So I will give the name XX REST invoke connection. Invoke connection. This is my connection name. Let me save connection name somewhere else so that we can use the same connection. Right. This is our connection, and our lookup name is. So here we have lookup, our lookup, right? So we have already lookup here. So now here we done created connection. Now we have to provide the credentials. So what kind of connection this is? So this is REST API based connection. And what is the connection URL? So the connection URL will be the API to whom we are going to expose. So we are going to expose this API, right? So this is the host name. So I will copy this host name and will provide here. This is the same Fusion host name, right? You can see here. This is the same Fusion host we added here. So now done. After that, we have to provide the username and password. So let me add the username and password. So now I have given the user ID password, and now it's time to test. So once we will test, the 8% will be changed to 100%. It means that our connectivity is configured. And now here you can see right now it is in the draft status. It means that we have to save. So once we will save, that will be converted to configure. And once the connection configured, we can be use that connection into the integration. So we'll go back and our connection is ready. So as we selected trigger and invoke type, so that the connection can be used while trigger endpoint as a invoke both. So here now we have to create the integration. So let me click on create. As we have to configure request and response, we will select app driven integration. So just select and done. Here we have to give the name. So XX create purchase requisition 01. Click on create. Now, once we click on the create, integration will be created, and we know that whenever we are creating app-driven integration, we are not going to get any endpoint. So here we have to drag the trigger endpoint. So we will drag the REST trigger endpoint. So here I will click on this plus, and here we have to select the connection. So as I have already make a note of the connection name, so I will copy this connection and I will paste the connection here. You can see this is our connection. I will select here. And here we have to configure the request and the response payload for this integration, not for invoking, not for calling this API, not for calling this API. Right now we are configuring the endpoint for the integration only. So here let me give the name as start rest. Next. And here we have to provide the what kind of work it's going to do and all. And here you can see the URI. So right now I will provide URI something that create requisitions, and we have to select post so that we can configure request and response payload both. So once we select post, it will be enabled, right? So here you can see we can select request and response payload. Now go to next. Here we have to configure the request payload. So in the request payload, we have already created the integration request payload where we have few columns only. That business unit and all is not here in the request payload because all this value we will get from the lookup only, right? VVCS page will pass only these values. So I will copy this one and in the JSON will paste. Okay. We are done with the request payload. Now it's time to configure the response payload. So here we have already created the response payload. So I will select JSON format. And here we have to provide the value. So we provided the response payload. Click on OK. And done. Next. And done. So we successfully added the endpoint to configure the request and response payload to this integration. Now save. and now we have to perform the operation. So always we will always suggest that whenever we will create integration, we will add the scope, so that that will be easy to handle the exception, any exception if we got. So here what I will do, I will select the scope here. So for that, here we have to select the scope. I will drag the scope here. I will give the name as create requisition scope. Click on create. The scope is added here, you can see. So now what we will do, we will add all these things inside this scope only, so that whenever we will get any exception, that will be handled in the fault handler only. So now here we will get the data as a request payload. Same data we will need to pass here while calling the REST endpoint. So again, I will create one connection. We will add the connection for calling the REST API for creating the requisitions. So here this is our connection name. I will copy this connection name. I will click on plus, and here we have to provide the name. So you can see once we given the name, the connection is visible here. Now we have to select the connection. So here, as this endpoint is going to create the requisitions, I will give the name as create requisition. And here we have to provide the URI. So as you know that we have already provided these details, the host name while creating the connection. We already provided the host details while creating the connection. So rest of the details we need to provide here. I will copy this one after the host.com, and we will provide here. So now we're done with the endpoint. So you can see this is the same endpoint we have here for creating the requisition. And now here we will select as post. Why? Because we have the method as post here, right? That's why we selected post. And this API support a request and response payload. So that's why we will configure the request and response payload. As you can see here, while running the API from Postman, we are passing some request payload, and based on the request payload, we are receiving some response payload. So this is the request payload. So I will copy this request payload. And the same request payload we will pass here as we configure the request. So here I will select JSON, as we are passing JSON request payload only. And here we have to provide the details. We provided the details. So this payload will having the all the columns, the requisition BU prepared ID and the type, inventory type. You can see that item description and all these things, line type code. Why? Because we are invoking the REST API, right? Okay, and now we have to configure the response payload. So we already have the response payload, as we already executed from the Postman. So in the response payload, once we will go next, again we have to select the JSON, and here in line we have to provide the payload. So click on done. Okay. So we are done with configuration of the REST endpoint to invoke the REST API. Now it's done. Now it's time to provide the value. So here you can see we configured the request payload, but we didn't provide the value yet, right? That value as we provided here. So this hard-coded value, now we have to map this value in the integration. So you can see we added the endpoint, and now we have to map the values. So how we will map the values? So here you can see in the mapper only we can map the value. So here we will edit one. So here in the request reference, we will expand. You can see these all are the value. Requisition BU, prepared ID, externally managed flag, all these things. What is same we have here? Description, justification lines, description, justification line. Inside the line, we have the line values, and then we have the distribution, and inside the we have the distribution values, same as here we provided, right? Inside the line, we have line values, and then we have the distribution to columns. All these things we have here. Now we have to map. So all the details we are getting from the request payload, except few details. Few details we are getting from lookup. So I will add the lookup data. So here, let me first map each and every value. So distribution is array elements. You can see this array. So we'll map this array with array. Now element with element. This distribution number will be mapped with this distribution number. Now we are done with distribution. Now we have to map the array element. You can go for top to bottom, bottom to top. I just follow any in whatever we suggest. So write this array line array to line array, line number to line number, line number. After that, line type code we are getting from lookup. So I will map lookup here. Now we have line category names. I will map this category name, item description, and here you can see we have to map this item here. But if you will see in the payload, in item we are passing null values. and we cannot pass null value directly here, right? So if you will not map any value, it will by default consider this item as a null value. So that's why we don't need to map this item here, right? Then after we have quantity, we have the price, we have currency code, unit of measure, and requester ID, destination type, and the destination organized deliver to location. Destination organization code we don't have here, right? Okay, yes, we have the destination organization code. We map wrong, right? So you can see here the deliver to destination type code. You can see destination type code we will get from the lookup, right? So here you can see we have destination organization code we mapped here. This value we will map from the lookup. Deliver to location and the requested delivery code date. So all these things we are getting from the distribution we already mapped. Now this will be we will map from the lookup, and this will be mapped from the lookup, and here we have header value. So let me add header value that externally managed, description, and justification. Now we are remain with the values, which values we are getting from the lookup. So let me start from here. So requisition view we will get from lookup. So we'll create target node, and here we have to provide the value. So how we can provide the lookup value? So we have lookup function, the lookup values function. With the help of this function, we can get the lookup values. So I will drag here, and here I will show you how we can configure the lookup values in the integration mapper. It's taking a little bit of time to load the lookup. So here you can see we have the lookup. There are many lookups created in an instance, right? So my main lookup is SCM lookup. I will select here, go to next. It will ask to select the source column and the target column. Source column means by which column, on which column we will get the data. So there can be situation that there can be the different columns, different record. So for which record we have to get the column. So for record having the integration code as PR, right? So integration code will be our source, and the destination will be our requisition BU or the preparer ID or all these details. So right now we have to get the requisition BU. So here I will select source column as a integration code, and the target column we will select as we are going to map for requisition BU, right? So I will select the requisition BU here. So now you can see once we will pass PR to the integration code, it will return back as US business one unit. I don't want to configure any default value. Next and done. So we are done with that. So let me save here. I will copy the same. So instead of each and every time dragging, I will use the same. So right now here you can see in the source value, we have to provide the value for this column int code. So int code we have PR. So I will provide this PR here. So that based on that PR, it will get the data of the requisition BU column. So save. So now we are done with the requisition BU part. Now it's time to prepare a ID. So again, I will click on target node, and here we'll provide, and instead of requisition BU, I want to get the preparer ID. So I will copy this preparer ID name, column name here, and I will pass here. Now save. Now we map with the preparer ID from the lookup, and now we done with the business unit, requisition business unit, and the preparer ID. Now it's time to go for line, and line here we have the line type code. So again, I will create target node. Here we'll provide, and instead of preparer ID, we have to provide the line type code. Now we're done. Map here. Let me copy this code again. So we are done with these values. Now here item we will make it null only, as we are not going to pass item while creating the requisition. We are passing the description as it is goods type, and here we have the destination type, right? So we'll again create target node, and we'll provide here, and instead of line type code we have to provide the destination code only. So here we have So let me go copy from here only. So here we have provided the destination type code. Done. So we have only four column coming from the lookup. So we map all these four values. So now everything we have mapped there, right? So now we are ready to call this API using integration. So when this integration will be completed, right? When this REST API will be hit, it will return back response. In the response, we will get all this data. But out of all this data, we require only requisition. This is the requisition number so that we can return in the response. So now here we are done with that. So here if you will see, if everything is fine, we will get the data, we will pass this data to API and API will return the data. It will not throw an error. Then what we have to do, we have to return the data as a response. So here you can see the start rest is a response wrapper. So I will reposition this wrapper inside this scope and here will provide the mapping. So as we know that if we don't have any error here and we got the response, it means it's working fine, right? So here what we will do in the response wrapper status, we will map as success, right? SUCCESS, success. And now here in the requisition number, we will map this requisition number from the create requisition rest invoke, right? We are invoking on the response. So expand and in the response wrapper, you can see we have all the column, whatever column we are getting in the postman. So you can see requisition header ID, requisition BU ID and all prepaid ID, all these things here. So I will map this requisition with here. So now done, validate and close. So now we are done with the success message and suppose sometimes if we got the error, right? So whenever we got any exception, what we need to do? So whenever we will got exception here, we need to navigate to the default handler. So now here, in case of any exception, control will move here in the default handler and here we have to handle the exception. So we know that in case of exception, we have to return a status as error in the response message. So here for mapping the response, one mapper we have used here for success case. Now again in case of error or exception, we have to again provide the mapping. So here I will again drag the mapper here. We can use that one. So you can see once we map the drag the mapper, you can see the mapper started with start rest because we have only one endpoint remain. So here you can see in the response wrapper, we have to provide a status as error. ERR error. And in case of error, we don't have the requisition number. So in this case, in the requisition number, we will provide n by a, not available, something like that. You can provide it or you can use based on the requirement. Even in the error case, you can return back the error or the all the details. So here I am not able to save this one due to network issue. So let me check. Validate again now. Let me provide the requisition number here. Delete the target now. Now again create target node and let me provide the status as error. We are not able to save here due to issues, so we have to restart the instance. So let me restart the instance. So now again I am going to provide the mapping here. In the mapper we have to provide the error message, right? Error as a status and the requisition number. As we don't have requisition number, we will provide the null value. So here let me click on the status again and here we will provide ERR error. Sometimes yeah it's creating issue, so you can use that one, right? So again create target node and here it will be n by 8. So in case of error we don't have requisition number, right? So done. Done with the mapping. Let me save the mapper by validating and close. Here we have to close the mapper. So now we done with the mapping in case of exception, and we handle the exception. In case of success, we provided the success message. But remember, while discussing, we have to add the email notification also, right? So for adding the email notification, we have to drag the email notification here. And in case of error also, we will drag the notification. I will give the name as email notification, create. And here we have to provide the value from in from. And we know that we have already provided the from value in the lookup. So as I restarted, this value is removed. So I will add one more value again. Let me check. Now we have the say this lookup. Now we have to get the value for the values as to email from the lookup only, right? From success email, from error emails, all these things. So here again we have to drag the lookup function. Based on the lookup function only, we can get the lookup values. So I will drag this function here. Again, we will map all these values. So it's taking a little bit of time to configure the lookup here. So just wait for a while. And now here we have to select the lookup and go next. You can see total number of column 9. And here we have to select the column. So source column will be our integration code and the target column will be the from email. The from email will be same for both case, error case and success case. That's why we have only one from email. And go next. Default value, I don't want to provide anything, and done. So again, if you will see here, the from value we will get based on the integration code. What integration code we have to provide? We have to provide integration code as PR, so that based on this value, we can get the data. So we done here. Now I will copy this one so that the same I can use somewhere in different places. Now we done with the from mapping. So now you can see this notification we added in the success case, right? So that's why I will send this to email from to success email, right? So again, here I will copy, I will paste the function, and from email, instead of from email, we have to provide the to success email, right? So here you can see to email success. I will copy here and will pass. So all the values which we have for the success email, it will be mapped here, right? For the email notification. Close. And here we have to provide the subject. So I will provide the subjects. SUCCSS success. QUISITIO and requisition created successfully. Validate and close. Now same we have to provide the here in body message, right? So I will give the name body as hi team purchase requisition requis has been created in user. And here we have to provide the requisition number. Where we will get the requisition number? We will get a requisition number from the response only. So here we have to provide the value. So we know that in the email notification, if we want to provide value in the body, we have to use variables. So I will use variable as p under requisition num. And here we have to create this variable regards now here we will create variable with this name, and in that variable we will store the requisition number. So here we will get the requisition number from response. So you can see we have the create requisition rest call, and here in the response, if we will expand here, you can see we have the requisitions. I will drag this requisition here. Now validate and close. So now we are successfully done with all the configuration. Close here. So here you can see once we will pass the data as a request payload, the same data we pass here in the while invoking the REST API with some additional data coming from the lookup. And once this will be created successfully, it will return back response. Same response we map here as a requisition number and the status as success. And the same requisition number we mapped here in the email notification. And suppose if we got error, any error here in the add point. So the control will move to the fault handler. Default handler we added for the scope, and default handler here we will have the error details. So from where we will get the error details? We will get the error details from the default handler object output. How will fetch everything? I will show you here. So now here again, in case of error also, we have to map the notification. So I will drag this notification here and we'll give the name as error notification, right? Click on create. And now here we have to provide again the to email, from email, all the details. So again, I will go from email. Again, I will drag the lookup function. Here in the lookup function, we have to select the source column and the target column. So target column will be our from as destination column. So here we will select the lookup. Next, here we have the source column as integration code and the target column will be our from email, right? So here we have the from email. Next, next, and done. Okay, and here instead of the source values, we have to provide the value as PR, as we are going to get the lookup values from based on the PR only. I will copy this one so that we can provide the same in different places and close. And now here we have to use for to email. So this time this to email will be the error to email, right? So I will drag here and here you can see that we have the to error email. This is to email success. This is to error email. So success we have already configured. Now this time we will map the error one. So we validate and done. And here we have to provide the subject. So subject will be error. Error and message. I want to print that requisition requisition not created. Validate and close. And here we have to provide the message. So I will provide hi team. There is some error while creating the purchase requisition. And here we have to provide the error details. So here we can see below are the error. And error details from where we will get? We will again create one variable p underscore error. And in that variable, we will store the error details. OIC 14. And here we have to create the variable as a parameters for this notification. And here, once we will go for the value for this one, you can see for this fault, right? We added the scope. And here you can see we have the scope fault object, the scope name create requisition. And if we got any error, control will move inside the scope fault handler and the fault handler having the object as this one fault. And that fault store the details, error code, error reason, details. So all this value we want to pass, but you can see this value is in the node form. So we have to convert this into a string. That's why we have function get context as a string. So this function get content as a string. This function will take node values and it will convert that node into a string values. So here we mapped here, validate and close. So now we are done with the logic, validate and close. So here we done with everything. So if everything will be fine, it will create the requisition. It will pass the requisition number in the mapping, create pass the value in the notification. If we got any error, control will move here in the move default handler and again it will trigger an email and in the response it will send that error message. So everything we have done. Now it's time to run the integration. So before running the integration, we have one error and we know that every time whenever we are creating any integration, we have to provide the tracking variable. Minimum one tracking variable is required. So once we will map the tracking variable business identifier and we'll save, you can see error is resolved now. Now this integration is ready to activate. So we'll save and close. So here this is our integration. We have to activate this integration. So we'll enable the tracing, activate. Now done. So we are done with the activation. Just go for test. In the request body, you can see here we have already few data. This is the same data we configure while we provide while configuration, right? So I don't want to change anything, just want to change the description of the requisition. So here I want to give the requisition using integration instead of 01. Here I will provide the requisition by integration and it will be 0001. So just click on test. So once we will click on the test, same data will be passed to the API and it will create the requisition. And here you can see once requisition created, it's written as the data as requisition number. You can see the requisition number 204167. If we will move to the here and here, if you will refresh the page, you can see we will be able to see the requisition. This requisition number with 167. So here you can see, let me go to the home page and come back again. And in the requisition, here let us open the requisition page. And here you can see the requisition created 204167. 204167 and the requisition description is requisition by integration 001. And if we want to pass another values, suppose we want to create another requisition as 02 and click on test. Another requisition will be created. We will return back the requisition number as an integration response and again it will trigger the email. So you can see the new requisition number is 68, right? And if we will come to the fusion, again I will go to home and come back to the requisition page. We will get the new requisition created here. Once we will click on this requisition page, here I will show you this. Due to a network issue, that's why it's taking a little bit of time to reload the pages. And here you can see new requisition created with 68 and the requisition details you can see 002. And for the same, we got the email. Let me show you the email. And here you can see I got the email. So I run 2 times. That's why I got 2 email. And you can see both having the hi team. You can see the email success requisition created successfully. And you can see hi team purchase requisition has been created in Fusion. Purchase requisition number this one. You can see. Now suppose if we run the integration and we pass invalid values so that it can generate the error. So here instead of if I pass the null value, remember we cannot map null value directly, right? So right now we are going to map, it will generate an error. So we'll click on the test and here you can see, no, it's created. So let me pass another values. Any invalid values, something like currency code. If we didn't pass the value in the currency code. So yes, here you can see if we forget to pass the currency code, sometimes that can be scenarios like the VBCS page will not map value for currency code and your integration will not receive the currency code. So at the time you will get an error. So here you can see we got exception error, all these things. Okay, now here, sorry, we got exception right now this time in the payload only. So this is not the correct way. So suppose instead of that we pass these values, right? So suppose here we pass the instead of 001, we pass the null value. And let me check with this null. So as we already handled the exception, so we will get an error email. Here you can see. So once we pass the invalid inventory, right, you can see the destination organization code as null we passed, we got an error. And integration return back the status as error and the requisition number not available. And if you will check the email, so you can see we already receive an email and you can see error requisition not created. Why? What is the error? You can see hi team. There is some issue error while creating the purchase requisition. Below are the error, and here you can see this is the error details. So this is the way we can create integration where we will handle the exception and all these things. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe this channel. And yes, if you want to connect with us, you can connect with us on LinkedIn with the name Aaron Zafar. And don't forget to subscribe again. Thank you so much for watching.